Good morning and welcome to our next session of visual journaling for stress relief and spiritual growth. Today I'm going to focus on sort of archetypes and symbols, and I've set up this page next to the water-soluble marker activity where we did coloring spaces and then activating the pigment with water on brushes, just as a sort of a visual connection for me. So archetypes are examples of a certain person or thing, or a recurrent symbol or motif in art, in literature, and we often see them as, they're often shown as, with the hero archetypes or the warrior archetype. We also have these sun symbols, circles, spirals. I saw one explanation of a spiral as a spiral being concentric circles. So they're connected. The cross inside of a circle is also an ancient symbol that is repeated throughout cultures and history. And then in symbols, triangles and squares, other geometric shapes. Oftentimes, artists, and I'm going to focus on the visual art part here rather than the mythology and literature, and that artists connect with different kinds of symbols and archetypes, and these things tend to recur and happen over and over in their body of work. For me, I know that symbols come up a lot in my artwork, in my journaling, in my doodling. Symbols or spirals, circles, dots are things that I repeat over and over and over again. So I thought we'd do an activity first to start out with a breathing activity. So I'm going to find a page here that I haven't used yet. And in this activity, you're going to, sort of like the breathing with your, or drawing with your breaths, right? The breathing with your hand. And I know a lot of schools sometimes teach children breathing techniques. And I'm going to try to prop this page up a little bit. Okay. So, this is not something I've invented. It's something that people use in a lot of places. So hand breathing, and the mantra that I found that went with it: breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. So for this, in our journal, because this is a visual journaling, I'm going to put my non-dominant hand on the page, and I'm just tracing around. And the start happens here on this side of your pinky. So breathe in through your nose, out through the mouth. In through the 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 nose, out through the mouth. Right? And you could repeat that process as long or often as needed. So as a way of being able to remind yourself of the process, then in the visual diagram here on the page, I'm just going to make a series of arrows. So this is the breathe in through your nose. Breathe. Oops, let's add the E there. Out through. Probably want to turn your page for this. Your mouth. And I'm not going to rewrite. I'm going to put the start over here. It's up to you if you wanted to rewrite that each time, but I'm just going to continue with the series of arrows. And the finish. And then that quote is, or mantra is, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. And the mantra comes is attributed to this person. So sort of a way to bring some calm. I have an activity that you might like to do with the hand. You may choose to leave it plain, but I'll share another one later in the week on if you're interested in adding to the visual elements of the hand. So with that, we're going to transition back to this page. So for you, depending on how you want to do this, you can start with a fresh page. I'm just making this sort of a journal entry. I'm going to be doing a drawing activity here, and then I'm going to use this page and I'm going to start adding elements to it. If you did your marker and there's something next to it, so you don't have that to work with, that's fine. If you really like your image and the visual of this and you want to leave it alone and you just want to work on a blank spread, that's totally fine as well. Whatever, wherever you feel like you're at for today. So, the first activity that I want to do is actually a little mathematical. So spirals. I've mentioned I love spirals. And spirals are, I feel like they're very intuitive. They just sort of flow. They're also very natural. We see them in nature all over. And, sorry, I'm trying to get my book so it's sort of flat. And Fibonacci sequence is for those people who like the math stuff. There are some really fabulous geometric and I'll put links to these. So if you can see here, these are rose curve, called the rose curve and cyclodal. I also just like the words. I think if I were playing with these personally, I would not be as focused on the math of it, right? Because I don't know so much about the math, but I find the math and the geometry and the history of it very interesting, right? So this page here has all of these different kinds of geometric and mathematical equations that create these different forms. So Bernoulli, we love Bernoulli as sailors, and so but I've never thought of Bernoulli in the visual before. So that was kind of fun to look and see that. And then spirals. There's all these different kinds of spirals. So this one's kind of cool. We all have heard about Archimedes. I've never studied anything about what he did. My engineering friends probably have done some studying. But to know that there are these different kinds of spirals and all the math. These also from a visual, so from an art side, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking the choices of the colors that the graphic artist has used in these examples are really quite beautiful and meditative. This one in particular reminds me of the string art that we used to do, where you had nails that were pounded into a piece of wood, and then you ran the string across in different directions. And now I'm like, oh, I want to make one of those. So, this is where we go down that spiral of what else can I do with this, right? Here's yet another different kind of spiral. And then, there's a math to it. My brain just thinks that's fabulous. Fibonacci spiral is one of the most famous. And I have here a shell that was gifted to me by a friend. She collected it in North Carolina. But the spiral, the way the spiral turns and increases, there's a mathematical, this one also, there's a mathematical formula to nature, right? For those of you who love sunflowers, and you'll have to forgive the sad state of my coneflower here, but the coneflower and the sunflower, the way that the centers of these, where the seeds, right? These are actually the seed pod. The way that these grow and develop from the inside, from the center outward, is also mathematical. It's so, and if Fibonacci, the Fibonacci sequence explains that. So it's a number sequence, and it's going to go 0, 1, 1, 2, 3. And yes, I'm cheating and I'm looking because while I love and find it fascinating, my math brain doesn't hold on to the numbers quite so long. 5, 8, 13, 21. And it just keeps going. 34. Oops, this should be a 5, 55, etc., onward and onward, growing and growing. So we're going to do a Fibonacci spiral here on this page, I'm going to do it in this space. You can decide how and where you want to do it. Based on the size of my paper and the way the math works, I'm using centimeters instead of inches. And I know that I need that the finished one that I'm going to make right now I need at least 13 centimeters long by at least 8 centimeters high. Okay. So in order to make it work. I'm just going to double check my practice over here so that I can, yeah. All right. All right. So it's going to grow in two directions. Right. Breathe, math brain, breathe. You can do this. We're going to go 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So I need to do my, so I need 1, 1, and then let's math here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to move it over. All right, so I'm going to do my first square. I know I want it to be about there, and I want 5, 8. Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. Here's where the math brain really has to work, right? So I know that this square on this side has to be 8 centimeters. So I need 8 centimeters over there. So I know I have to have 8. So my 1 centimeter is going to happen in here. It's probably too high. I know that I need 3 centimeters on the top and 3 centimeters on the bottom. 1, 1, 2. And then I'm not going to go down anymore. So let's, 1 and 2 is 3. So let's make it at the, how much did I gave myself 10. And I said I needed 8. So now you get to see my math brain in action here. I'm just going to come all the way down to the bottom. And I know my 1 needs to be here. And this is going to be my 2. So I'm going to put that. And now that I know, I'm going to do 1 and 1. And because it hurts our math brain, we're just going to do that. So this is 1, 1, and this box is 2 centimeters square. This box needs to be 3 centimeters square. Theoretically, my math says that this is 3. And then we're going to go up. 3 plus 2 should be 5. And since it's square, I've got to go up 5. Now, a 5-inch square plus a 3-inch square is 8. So it's already 8 high, and I measured, ooh, it's just a little bit off, but not bad. So I can just draw the line across. So 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 5. And can you feel the spiral already going? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So now in this first one, we're going to divide it in half. And I'm going to get, I'm going to use this pink marker to help mark, because I'm not going to do this with a compass, drawing compass to get my marks perfect. So I'm going to start, this is going to be my start down here. Uh-oh. Let's see if I can bring this. so hopefully you can see the little pink start here. And the curve is going to come to this point. I'm going to exaggerate. This point, this point, this point. It's going to come over to this point, up to the top to that point, and then down to the corner. And I'm going to draw it. I should have drawn it, those marks in, oh well. I want a contrasting color, so I guess that contrasting color will be green. So, now for the mathematicians who are cringing, get out your compass, measure accurately, that's fine. So it would keep going, right? Our next one would be down below, and 8 plus 5 is, oh, look at that, 13. So if you wanted to keep going and expand this, the square below would be 13. Then we'd move over to here, and the square would be 21, 34, 55. Math that. So this is just sort of, you know, I do a lot of very intuitive, and I thought it would be good just, you know, just play. Because I do find I'm not anti-math, I'm not anti-technology. So I just sort of like to have a little bit of that, you know, hanging around. And that's sort of, you know, it's sort of fun to do that and play with that. And where might this come back? Where would I want a more mathematically precise circle or spiral? And where would I want a more intuitive spiral in my work, right? So for where I'm at now, what's going to be, this would be my writing here, because I've got this quote that I found from an ancient Greek. Oops, let's get back out. So if I'm doing this as a journal page, I've got my list here of archetypes and symbols. I've got a drawing, I've got a quote, and then I need some writing. I just thought this was kind of cool. Ancient Greek. God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. So, so for this next part, I'm going to switch over to I think I'm going to use, I'm trying to decide right now if I want to use a water soluble, so that, you know, again, so if it gets wet, it gets activated, right? Or if I'm going to do a permanent, and I think I'm going to do a water soluble, and I'm going to use just a Papermate Flare pen. So, and as I said, I'm going to work on this and add some things to this page here. But if you want to do this on a different page, if you wanted your extra box to be where you do this little exercise, that's, you know, totally fine. That's it's whatever you want to do. So for this, I am going to set a timer for 2 minutes. And this exercise comes from the writer and cartoonist Lynda Barry. And I'll put a link to this, to her work in the comments. And she shared in an article, it was in the New York Times, about some of her process for her writing process. And I thought that it was just a really interesting connection with the drawing process. And I'm getting ready to do a writing exercise. And so what could I help with the thinking process on it, right? So what she has you do is, she calls it spiral your way in. So you start drawing a slow, tight spiral and let it let your mind's eye drift, right? So you're just thinking while you're spiraling, and you could be thinking about whatever places, people, things, sort of envisioning in your mind a little bit, right? So I'm going to just, and this is just allowing your brain to sort of spiral in, focus in on something, and get going. So I'm going to do that right on top of here with this flare pen. So I'm going to hit the start and we'll start that. Okay, so 2 minutes of spiraling, and oops, turning off the timer. So now I might go into my writing activity. Now, if I was following Lynda Barry's strategy for writing, her next activity, her next step is to set another 2-minute timer and to make a list. So I might do that on another page. I might do it directly on here. I might just sit and make a list in my mind. She talks about making a list of anything that you were thinking about and envisioning. What were you thinking about while your marks were happening, right? And then she goes on to setting an 8-minute timer and starting to just sort of write. And she talks about places and people and thinking about those in that particular article. It's more specific to like thinking about location. So I'm using this today just as a starting point for what am I going to put in my little journal. So if you've got a specific thing you're thinking about right now that you want to focus on, you can use it in that direction. So I'm really loving these lines of this spiral on the page, and feel like in order to finish this page, maybe I'll come back in an hour and do a second spiral. I'm thinking I'd stick with black, and maybe the spirals are they'll probably end up overlapping, right? Based on the size of the page. And then maybe I come back an hour later and I do another. I'm sort of, again, like the body scan and the breathing lines, right? Like what happens if you do a series of body scans over the course of one every hour or one a day? And how do they look different? How do they look similar? Do you put them all on the same page? Would you put them on different pages to each one get their own? Are they, are they a solo or are they a group show? Right? So but you start to see patterns. You start to see things coming out in that. So while these are just marks that are made for your personal in the moment expression, you can also bring them to a more finished place. So for me, this feels unfinished, and I'd want to continue adding 2-minute spirals throughout my day today after I'm done writing. So I hope this gives you something to think about this week. I'll probably have another short video later in the week. But maybe take a moment and go through any of your doodles, any of your work, and what symbols. Are you very geometric? Do you have a lot of squares? Are you drawn when you doodle? What comes up? Squares or triangles? Do you have spirals? Do you have circles? Do you end up with sun symbols or sort of floral? Do you have a lot of dots? What are those things that are recurring in your marks as you're starting to create this visual journal, this dictionary, Pictionary, of yourself. So, hope you have a great day and a relaxing week. Thanks.